What's up, guys? My name is Ace, and today I wanted to have a recap of a few things that were discovered since the launch of Season 5. I know I'm a little bit late on this one, and many other creators have talked about it, but I wanted to continue spreading the news, and the reason it's taken me so long is I had a very busy weekend. I actually got married this weekend. It was an absolutely perfect day, and just a reminder, I will be heading out on my honeymoon from mid-August until the end of August. And I want to make sure I keep reminding you guys, just because during that period, I obviously won't really have any relevant Call of Duty or X-Defiant news videos because I will be gone. I am going to have some videos scheduled for you, but it's going to be things that I'm able to pre-record. But enough about that, let's dive right into this and talk about the first pay-to-win element. And this is with the optic on one of the weapon bundles that comes in the Dark Rituals 3 bundle. And this is on the Death's Door blueprint for the Cronin Squall. And with this, I'm not going to be buying this bundle in order to show this off for you guys. However, one of the first people that really spread the news on this was Lego Unlocked. I will leave a link to his channel down below. In his video, he actually shows off a bunch of different examples, but I did want to at least show a few side-by-side comparisons. Again, these are coming directly from him. And with this, as you can see here, enemy players pop so much more with this version of the Holotherm compared to the default version of the Holotherm, because you can see so much more contrast, especially through smoke. You can see they glow like a really dark red, which pops a whole lot more than that super bright yellow where you can kind of only see a bit of an outline. And even against cold-blooded players, they pop up through this no problem, whereas with the standard Holotherm, you can technically see a cold-blooded user, but not very well. So I would absolutely classify this under pay to win, and some people get this mistaken. Pay to win doesn't mean like you pay for it and you're guaranteed to win the game. All it means is you're paying for something that gives you a gameplay advantage that can't be gained through any other method aside from paying real money. And I would say this definitely falls under that classification because it's hard to miss enemies with this version of that Holotherm, whereas with the default version, it's pretty easy to not see enemies through smoke, especially if you start stretching that range out a little bit. So that is really unfortunate to see. I hate to see any sort of pay-to-win elements where you can gain that gameplay advantage just by paying real money that nobody else is able to attain. Personally, when it comes to this situation, rather than nerfing this pay-to-win version of the optic, I think they should just buff the base version of the optic. Create some more contrast there. I don't mind if the coloring is a little bit different, but I'd like to see the gap between these closed quite a bit when it comes to general visibility of players. So if you are using the standard version of this Holotherm, it would also be hard to miss enemies, especially if they're not using cold-blooded, rather than how we have it right now, where it's not a very good optic to be using because, well, you can see somebody through smoke. It's pretty hard to pick them out through there. So there we go, that's the first element that was introduced in Season 5 that could be considered pay to win. Now let's talk about the second one, and this is quite a surprising one. This is that dog, which they call Merlin, and this isn't just a visual accessory on Arthur, who is the character that comes with the Blackcell Battle Pass. There's actually a slight gameplay advantage that can be gained when using this character. Now this one at least is thankfully fairly limited, but I still wanted to go over it, and it still technically provides you a gameplay advantage that can't be gained in any other way. But with this, if you're using this character and you're using the High Alert perk, you have to be using High Alert and it has to be charged up. Anytime an enemy looks at you within 100 meters, that dog will growl, so it gives you an auditory indicator that you're being looked at, on top of the visual indicator that you would get with High Alert. And this is what that audio cue will sound like. Now it is also worth noting, without the dog in the picture, High Alert only works if the enemy is looking at you when they're not in your field of view. When they're either beside you or behind you, you will get that visual indicator. If they're within your field of view, you don't get any indicator at all with High Alert. There's nothing that pops up on the top of the screen or anything. You just have to be able to use your eyes and spot that player, which isn't always the easiest thing. However, it is worth noting, this dog will still growl even with enemies that are in your view, so it gives you that additional indicator that you wouldn't get otherwise. So that gives you a little bit of an extra benefit there while using High Alert and this dog. However, I did want to also just confirm for you guys, if the enemy player doesn't look at you, just like with High Alert, the trigger with the dog here will also not activate. So it doesn't just activate if anybody gets in the general vicinity of you, like they can walk right up to you, but as long as they've got their back turned to you, just like no High Alert indicator will take place. Also with this, I should point out that Cold-Blooded is a full counter to this dog, just like it's a full counter to High Alert. So if you're using Cold-Blooded and it's currently charged up and you look at somebody that's using High Alert and the dog, there will be no growl and there will be no High Alert indicator. And then finally, I just wanted to point out the fact that other players can hear this dog growling as well. And that does include enemies, so that's a potential downside to this. In a very specific scenario at least, an enemy may end up being alerted to your presence when they look in your direction, but they don't actually end up picking you up. They don't see your character model. Maybe you're in a bush or something like that. This is what it'll sound like to them at various ranges. So you can probably see there that at 20 meters, you couldn't actually hear the dog at all. So it looks like the audible range of that dog for other players is roughly 15 meters or so. Anything beyond that, you won't be able to hear the dog growling. So there we go. That's two elements that were added with Season 5 that could be argued to be pay to win, and this is stacking on top of the pay to win style elements that came for DMZ, where with certain bundles you would get a free UAV every time you spawned into the game, or you'd get guns that charge up faster so you can jump back into DMZ with a fully kitted out gun again. Those started seeping into the game a few months ago. Seems like they're basically generally accepted at this point. And I think what we're seeing here is that slippery slope I was talking about with that video. A lot of people were saying it's not a big deal. It's just DMZ, where it's basically just PvE. Sure, there's some PvP elements, but that's not the primary focus of the mode. So it's not really that big of a deal if you get a UAV when you first spawn into the game. Now that's pretty much accepted, and it seems like they're starting to test the waters with some pay to win elements right now in multiplayer. And I will be the first to admit here, these elements, they're not a massive game breaker. They're not a huge deal. It's going to be rare that somebody's using that Holotherm Optic, and even when they are, if there's no smoke involved, it's probably not going to give you a huge leg up in any gunfights. Same thing with that dog. It only works when you're also using the High Alert perk. It only works in multiplayer when you spawn on the Spec Grew side of the map. If you spawn on the other side, you can't even use Arthur, so there's inconsistencies there. And then also, you could argue there's that slight downside to using the dog and High Alert because enemies may hear the growling dog as well. So like I said, these really might not seem like that big of a deal, but what's the next thing they're going to bring in? Is it going to keep getting a little bit worse and a little bit worse every time a new one of these pay-to-win style elements comes to the game? With the current trajectory we've already seen with Modern Warfare 2, yes, that is likely going to be the case if things don't turn around. So I highly encourage you guys to stay away from buying and using these items, because for everyone that does, that just signals to them that this is the type of thing that we want to see. We want to see more powerful optics with blueprints that you can only purchase in-game, or specific character buffs that only apply to characters that you can buy in the store and nobody else gets access to those same buffs. Now, I know you saw me doing the testing here. I did buy Blackcell this time around. This was before I realized that there was a character buff that was involved with this. And the only reason I bought Blackcell this time around when I normally wouldn't be buying Blackcell is I've got a very crunched schedule right now, prepping for my honeymoon, and I just needed to get the new guns immediately so I could get content out for you guys. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have bought this. I wouldn't be supporting this. And just out of principle, I decided I'm just going to completely avoid using this Arthur character ever in the game. Even if I'm not using High Alert, I'm just not going to use the character at all. And with that, that is going to wrap it up for today's video. And this is where I'd love to hear from you guys in those comments down below. What do you think about these new pay-to-win elements that are starting to encroach into the multiplayer side of things? And I should also mention Warzone. This all applies to Warzone as well. Do you think the many people like myself that are bringing this up are just being overdramatic here? Or do you really feel this is that slippery slope that we're seeing when it comes to pay-to-win in the Call of Duty franchise? Just let me know all of those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.